He's got back-to-back 20-goal seasons, but did Kirill Marchenko take 2 steps forward and 1 step back this season? Yes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and we're going to talk about why in just a second on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Also on SiriusXM is where you can find us. I also have to let you know that we've got to talk about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on Google Play or the App Store. So, let's talk about Kirill Marchenko, because that's the plan for today's episode. We're going to talk about his season, what he did, what he didn't do, what we want to see from him in the future, what his new contract could look like. Obviously, his entry-level contract ran out this season, so we're going to talk about all of that. But I think let's just kind of start off with Kirill Marchenko this season. Had career highs in everything, basically. He scored 23 goals, had 19 assists for 42 points. Last season, he had 21 goals in 4 assists for 25 points. Now, he did only play 60 games last season, but I think, you know, if you like prorate it out and you project, I think he probably scored about the same. Last season he was on pace. So if he played the full 82, I think he was probably on pace for 25 goals. And this season, if he played the full 82, he's probably on pace for 24 goals. So like basically identical goal scoring paces. He played about the same amount of ice time, which baffled me because, again, I felt like there were some games where he had loads of ice time, and then some games where he got basically none. He got healthy scratched a couple of times, so you know there was. That's the thing. Actually, I feel like he played 78 games. I don't know that he missed any games for illness or injury. I think he missed 1 game due to illness, actually, and then he was healthy scratched 3 times for reasons of. Sure, why not? With nothing else is working, let's healthy scratch Kirill Marchenko. But and I know what I said kind of in the opener of he took 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing, because what I mean by that is I think Kirill Marchenko took steps forward in basically everything this season except his goal scoring. That kind of stayed where it is, but everything else caught up to him a little bit. You know, that was the joke last season, was he made it, I think, did he score 18 goals before he got his first assist or something? Or, you know, something stupid, crazy like that. Finished the season with 4 assists. This year, he had 5 times that many assists. He had 19 assists on the season, 23 goals. So, you know, he became more of a playmaker. His game got a little bit more well-rounded. I thought he was... not terrible in his own zone, which for the Blue Jackets, I think you take that as a win, you know? I was looking on, I was just poking around on hockeyviz.com prior to recording this, just to kind of see what his numbers looked like. And Kirill Marchenko, actually, again, on a team that was just so brutally bad defensively this season, Kirill Marchenko's defensive impact, not terrible. It basically came out as even. I think he was like, I think he was actually just above average, so minus 3%. So that means that he allowed, like when he was on the ice, minus the defensive impact was 3% better than it would have than league average. Whereas the Blue Jackets were 11% worse than league average in total. So he actually had a pretty decent defensive impact all by himself, which is fun. And was really unexpected. Again, the power play, he got a decent amount of time on. Not outstanding numbers by himself. He was 1% better than league average, but the Blue Jackets power play as a whole was 4% worse than league average. And this is all in expected goals for and against per 60, just by the way. So he's, you know, he's better than the average on the team, and he's bringing the team up He scores way more than expected, which I think is kind of a given. But like I liked his season a lot. I thought he had. I'm glad that we saw flashes of not just the goal scorer from him. We saw more than flashes, really. But I think that was the thing last season was okay. He's clearly got this great shot that goalies seem to struggle with. Can he recreate that next season? Can he avoid kind of the quote unquote sophomore slump that Kozilja kind of endured last season and that Kent Johnson kind of endured this season? And he did. He avoided that. He avoided that sophomore slump. He got better. I think he took strides forward in becoming a more complete player. I'm just really impressed with Marchenko as a whole. And he's still pretty young. He's under team control, but he does need a new contract. So we'll talk about that in a bit because I want to talk about whether the Blue Jackets should give him a bridge deal, like 2-3 years, or whether they should lock him up long term, and that's not necessarily to say that they should give him like $8 million for the next 8 seasons or whatever. But I wonder, are they thinking, do they want to lock him up maybe 5 to 6 years as opposed to 2 to 3? And that's a conversation that the new GM will have to answer. And that's the thing as well is that, and I don't really want to get into like the nitty gritty of this actually. So we'll move on. I'll talk about that in a minute because the new GM is going to be involved in all of these contract conversations that are happening. The Blue Jackets, I think, have 5 or 6 RFAs that they probably want to keep. So the new GM is going to arrive, and his inbox is going to be like this, and his outbox is going to be like this to begin with. So he's got a lot of work to cut out from whoever that person may be. Back to Kirill Marchenko, 3rd on the team in scoring. Like I said, kind of up and down the lineup. Played with a bunch of different guys. Actually, I should pull up what his most played line combination was because I suspect it's probably one that he did not spend a whole bunch of time on. Because Kirill Marchenko, I feel like, was less subject to the random line shuffling. I feel like he mostly stayed where he was. For some reason, Natural Stat Trick will not let me sort by time on ice for line combinations. So we're going to go ahead and switch it up. The point being, I feel like Marchenko was one of the more consistent Blue Jackets this season. And that might be unfair of me. But I still think that's kind of how I feel about that. Here we go. So the Blue Jackets, in terms of who played the most minutes together. So the Russian line was actually his most consistent line. And they did kind of get caved in defensively. Scored a bunch, also allowed a bunch, so Chinikov, Voronkov, Marchenko played just over 250 minutes together. And then actually, that was the most used line for the Blue Jackets this season, actually. And then in 3rd place is Texier, Sillinger, Marchenko, which I liked a lot as a line, but also did kind of get caved in defensively. Gaudreau, Jenna, Marchenko was the 5th most used line. So Marchenko was part of the three of the 5 most used lines. And I think that's really interesting, but also does make me think, okay, well, why is there so much movement? And so the most played line for the Blue Jackets was the Marchenko, the Russian line. They got 262 minutes, I think it was exactly. The most NHL wide, Lafreniere, Trocheck, Panarin for New York played over 850 minutes together, so 600 minutes more. So that tells you just how little time that line actually spent together, and that's the most used line. If I scroll down a bunch, that is the 53rd most used line in the entire NHL is the Russian line. So you've got some teams, their third and fourth lines are getting more than that. And like the Lafreniere, Trocheck, Panarin line is kind of an outlier. Like they're just under 100 minutes more than second place. But the fact that Kirill Marchenko was one of the more consistently, had one of the more consistent situations, like healthy scratching aside, and he still only played like a quarter of what other top line forwards play with their line mates, or a third, I guess. I could do math, it's fine. Like that should worry me. And I think that's more worrying than like the up and down line time, I think, is the inconsistent line mates, because chemistry is a big part of hockey, and it's one of those things that's really hard to quantify. And it's one of those like intangibles that people love to talk about but don't really know what it is. But like it's a big thing. It matters. And the fact that Marchenko is succeeding despite all of this, I think, is really impressive. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk about his contract and what that could look like. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. They have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, so you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking all about Kirill Marchenko. Thanks for making us one of your first listens. Thanks for being an everydayer. We appreciate you. Kirill Marchenko. Inconsistent line mate, inconsistent ice time, consistent performance. That's important. And he might be like the most, maybe not the most interesting contract that they have to figure out, but I think he is the guy that, like, if they're going to lock any of these guys up, like semi long term. So just for reference, guys that I'm looking at for RFAs: Texier, Marchenko, Sillinger, Chinikov, Johnson. Those guys all need new contracts. Of all of them, Marchenko was the one that I could see them locking up long term, and I don't necessarily think he's going to get the Jack Hughes, Tim Stutzler money, where they give them like $1 billion, $1 billion for 8 years to try and figure out. Not to try and figure out, like, to try and avoid them going to market. But I could really easily see them looking at Kirill Marchenko and saying, right, how about $6 million for the next 6 years? How does that feel? And that feels I feel fine with that. It's going to be, the new GM is going to have so much work cut out for him. But if I'm him, like, the Marchenko deal is the one that I focus on, probably. Because I think, well, first of all, he's the only one. Well, Texier. I thought Jake Bean as well. Jake Bean's an RFA, but I don't know if they re-signed Jake Bean. My point is, he and Texier. Oh, and Alex Nylander. God, there's so many RFAs. I pulled up Cap Friendly and was like, right, this guy, and then there's like 4 more guys. Anyway, so that's what, 7 RFA contracts. So the Texier, Marchenko, and Nylander and Jake Bean are all arbitration eligible. So of those guys, I think Marchenko is not necessarily the most important to the future of the franchise, but if they get him locked up, it feels like they can then focus on everyone else. Like, if I had to go in order, I think probably what I would do is Marchenko, Johnson, Sillinger, and then see where we are with Chinikov, Texier, Nylander. Nylander, I assume, signs for not quite league minimum, but I expect him to sign a 1-year contract for pretty low. Jake Bean, genuinely, I don't know what to think. Jake Bean could be on the move at the draft. He could be signed to another extension. I just don't know. But like, Marchenko is the guy that I sit down. I'm like, right, okay, we'll hammer this out first. And I could genuinely see him getting 6x6. I could see him also getting maybe 2 or 3 years at slightly more than that, which 6x6 sounds like a lot initially, but you have to remember the cap is going up next season by, I believe, about $4 million. So there's an extra $4 million that they have to play with. There's some money coming off the books. In terms of there's $2 million coming off the books for Jack Rostovich. And I imagine there's probably going to be a little bit more coming off, maybe at the draft if there's some trades. Like, so really they've got, conservatively $6, $7, maybe $8 million to play with. Maybe closer to 10, depending on who they re-sign, who they don't, who they get rid of. I could see, like, and that's the thing is Sillinger, Chinikov, Johnson, specifically, I think we'll probably all get bridge deals in the realm of $2 to $3 million. Kirill Marchenko is older; he's closer to UFA status. I think he's been the most consistent of these guys. So that's my argument for giving him the long-term deal right now. Maybe six is too much, but they have to fit all of these guys under the cap. And that's kind of why I'm thinking about Jake Bean maybe being on the move, but like Adaboquist could be on the move. That's $2.6 million that you free up. Like Provorov could be on the move. I assume you'll have to retain there. Elvis could be on the move. I assume we'll have to either retain or pick up a bad contract in return for that. Like, so there's a lot of moving parts. And again, I guess it depends on the GM that they bring in, because some GMs, there's Bill Zito, I think, is really good at contracts because that's what he did with the Blue Jackets, is he did all of the contract signings. And I think that's where he kind of really shines in Florida as well. Yama was a really great drafter because he was a scout. So you want, depending on who comes in as the GM, do they bring in a guy that's going to be good with contracts? Do they bring in a guy that's going to be good at the draft? Like, ideally, you want to bring in someone that's going to be good at all of these things. But I'm wondering what the focus is now. I can't imagine they bring in a guy that's like draft focused because at this point you want to start building. So like, do they bring in a guy, Matthew Dash has been in the conversation. I'm still holding out hope that Eric Tulsky is going to be in the conversation. But I guess it really falls down to, now that Tampa's out, obviously, do you go ahead and interview Dash and offer him the job before he gets snapped up by someone else? Do you try and wait and see if Tulsky's available when the Hurricanes finish their season? Like, I don't like. There's so many moving parts, and that's why it's kind of impossible to predict what's going to happen, because it's going to really come down to what does the new GM think of the player, what does the new front office or the newish front office. I think some guys are like, there wasn't like a full firing. It wasn't like a full cleaning house. Everyone else is still there. The assistant GM, people like that. The president of hockey ops, obviously, John Davidson is going to be there, and he'll probably be heavily leaning on him for the draft and for the contract stuff. But it's really going to come down to what does he think of this player and what does he think the cap situation is going to look like, because the Blue Jackets aren't in a ton of cap trouble. There's a couple of there's some contracts here, like the Damon Severson contract. I think is gonna be a problem in a couple of years. The Elvis contract is obviously a problem. Tough to say what's going to happen with the Line A contract and with, Line A in general. But, the Blue Jackets, for the most part, are not they're not stuck in cap hell in the way that some teams are. Some teams have got these huge contracts that players just aren't living up to. And I think the Blue Jackets, they have a couple of guys that aren't quite living up to their contracts, but I feel fine about most of what's happening with the cap situation right now. So I have no idea. If I had to guess, my knee-jerk would be probably Marchenko. And I think they want to not lock him up long term. Maybe this is me hedging, but like I could see him getting like $6 million for the next 4 seasons, or the next 5 seasons, let's say, or 6.5 for the next 5 seasons. Let's go with that. Because if any of these guys is getting a long-term deal, it's probably going to be Marchenko. And then I guess really the jury is out on what they do with everything else, whether they free up cap somewhere else. And I think what happens at the draft is going to be really important in terms of what the cap situation is going to look like next year. Because if they can shift some more salary at the draft, who knows? Who knows what will happen? We're going to take another quick break. When we get back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Kirill Marchenko, like who his ideal line mates should be, and we'll give him a grade as well. So that's coming up in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about Monopoly Go because I'm obsessed with this game, and I was really excited when Monopoly Go announced that they were going to be sponsoring the podcast because I play it all the freaking time. It's addictive. It's my go-to. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm waiting for work to come in, or I'm waiting on an email response, or like dinner is in the oven. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to play Monopoly Go. You can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together, build up each other's boards. You unlock awesome prizes. You can collect stickers to trade for big prizes. They've got cool playing pieces. There's a little hockey skate that I use as my Monopoly Go playing piece. They've got emojis so you can taunt your friends when you make their lives difficult and cause problems on purpose. And it feels new and exciting every day. They've got unique mini games. They've got a robot pachinko machine. You can dig for treasure. They've got multipliers for everything that you win so you can make even more money. And there's always something new and fun to discover at Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about Kirill Marchenko and who he should play with. And I'm going to flip my money puck back over to the Blue Jackets. Because I have some thoughts on this. And like, I know everyone loves the Russian line because it's fun and exciting and it scores a bunch of goals. And it did score a bunch of goals. But I don't know that that's the best thing going forward. I think Marchenko probably should be playing higher in the lineup than both Chinakhov and Voronkov. I think Voronkov as a third or fourth line center is going to be great. Like for my money, the centers down the middle next season should be based, depending on who they draft, obviously. But assuming that they don't get Celebrini, Fantilli should be the top spot center, and then Sillinger, Jenner, Voronkov, or Sillinger, Voronkov, Kuraly. Whether I think Jenner should be moved to the wing. They're not going to do that because now he's played as center for so long and they couldn't possibly move him anywhere, I guess. But in terms of who Marchenko should play with, his most successful line that played more than 100 minutes is the Gaudreau, Jenner, Marchenko line, which I liked that line a lot. I thought it was effective, scored a bunch of goals, did not allow a bunch of goals. The expected numbers are kind of wobbly, but better than most other lines that played a ton of time. That was Marchenko's best line that played over 100 minutes. And I feel fine about that. Again, I think I would swap Jenner for Sillinger in that situation. I think Jenner and Sillinger have similar-ish games. I think Gaudreau, Sillinger, Marchenko might be the line. And then you put Fantilli and Brindley together, and then, put Kent Johnson or whoever. So that's your top six. Like, that feels like a pretty good top six to me. Obviously, it doesn't, like, you got to figure out what's happening with Laine, whether he's back, whether you move his contract, whether I don't know. I don't know what happens with Laine. It's so up in the air, and it's impossible to figure out. And we'll not hear anything for some time on Patrik Laine, I don't think. But that, to me, feels like the best option for Marchenko. He and Gaudreau work really well together. I think putting Sillinger in the middle of them, he really kind of impressed me this season in terms of going up against the big boys on the other teams. I think he had a really great bounce back season after his miserable season last year. And I would love to see him get rewarded for the strong end he had to the season with, hey, go play with Johnny Gaudreau and Kirill Marchenko, and do what you're gonna do. So that's kind of how I feel about that. I know, again, the Russian line, lots of fun, lots of excitement, lots of goal scoring, got caved in defensively basically every time they were in that zone. So not sustainable. Could be fun for a power play. Have the 3 Russians plus Werenski and, I don't know, literally whoever, Gaudreau maybe. Could be fun for a power play. I don't think it's fun for even strength. I don't think it's good for even strength. That should be. Overall grade for Marchenko, I'm going to give him an A. I think he exceeded expectations in basically everything except goal scoring. I really hoped he would hit 30 goals. He had some cold streaks, which it happens. Goal scorers are streaky by nature, but for the most part, I thought he was one of the more solid Blue Jackets almost all season long. Despite the fact that Pascal Vincent kept putting him on the bench or in the press box at random times. That's kind of that. I've no more kind of analysis on that. I think he was one of their best players this season. I think he deserves the A, and I'm really excited to see what his new contract looks like. And hopefully he gets kind of like Gaudreau. I would love to see him get consistent and appropriate line mates next season. What I mean by appropriate is guys that are on his level. Stop putting him on the third line and expecting magic to happen. Tomorrow, that's all I've got for today's episode. I thought I said that, but I don't think I did. Tomorrow, we are going to be doing let's do some draft lottery fun. Maybe we'll run a couple of tankathon sims. We'll see where the Blue Jackets land. We'll talk about who they could draft at that position, who they should draft at that position, things like that. We'll do some mock draft lottery fun. And then, to inevitably get sad when the Blue Jackets don't win the draft lottery tomorrow night. I think it's tomorrow night anyway, May 7th, I believe. That's all for today, though. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and on SiriusXM. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and on Instagram. You can email me if you want to comments, questions, criticisms, etc. Send all of those to lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. I have finally fixed the spam filter that was sending everything to spam. So if you have sent an email, I do apologize. I am going to respond to it today. I didn't know that they were there. So that's me today. Once again, tomorrow, draft lottery /mock draft lottery fun. And until then, make sure you stay locked on.